hasn't stopped them from controlling you. Michel de Montaigne once wrote, "My life has been full of terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened." And in that one sentence, he revealed the secret most people live their whole lives avoiding. You're not suffering from life. You're suffering from your imagination. You rehearse tragedies that don't exist. You replay what-ifs like they're memories. You build entire futures around failures that haven't happened and might never happen. You think it's preparation. You think it's being realistic. But it's fear, dressed up as intelligence. And the worst part is, the more you think you're being careful, the more you're being controlled. Not by people, by thought patterns, by internal narratives that were planted in you long ago. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the part of you that hides fear behind logic, that creates worry not to protect you, but to preserve your illusion of control. Because worrying feels like action. It feels productive. You think, at least I'm doing something. But you're not. You're stalling. You're running simulations in your head while life keeps moving without you, and you're losing time. You're not overwhelmed because of your life. You're overwhelmed because of your interpretation of it. And that interpretation, it was shaped by systems that needed you anxious. Because an anxious mind is easy to influence. It obeys, it avoids, it apologizes. That's why the world rewards the worried. It keeps them quiet, predictable, dependent. And you've confused your anxiety for identity. But it's not you. It's a voice that grew louder every time you gave it silence. They taught you that worrying means you care, that if you're anxious, it means you're responsible, empathetic, attentive. But what they didn't teach you is that worry doesn't fix anything. It only fixes you in place, like a glitch on loop, like a cursor blinking but never moving. And the longer you stay in that loop, the more real it feels, the more valid your fear seems. Because emotion always seeks justification, and if you look hard enough, you'll find it. Always. Every little risk becomes a disaster in disguise. Every unknown becomes a threat. Every pause in progress becomes a sign that something's wrong. But it's not wrong. It's life. Unpredictable, uncontrollable, unfolding on its own time, whether you worry about it or not. Machiavelli once warned that power lies not in control, but in the illusion of control. And your anxiety, it feeds that illusion, because worrying makes you feel like you're holding the wheel. But deep down, you know, you're not driving. You're just burning fuel in place. And you've mistaken that burn for movement. You spend so much time anticipating pain that you forget how to experience peace. You walk into good moments already rehearsing how they'll end. You wake up preparing for problems that haven't arrived. You shrink your joy preemptively, just in case it gets taken. And who taught you that? Who convinced you that protection means pre-suffering? You weren't born anxious. You were trained to be, by a culture that profits from your stress, that calls worry awareness, that sells fear as preparedness. But that fear makes you forget something simple. Right now, you're alive. Right now, nothing's chasing you. Right now, this breath is safe. And right now is the only place life actually happens. Because here's the secret no one tells you. When you stop worrying, life doesn't fall apart. It opens up. Not because everything suddenly becomes easy, but because your resistance no longer makes it harder. You stop choking every situation with what if. You stop running scenarios that don't exist. You stop interrupting peace before it even arrives. And for the first time, things begin to move, without your panic as a prerequisite. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop assuming your suffering is the cost of caring. Because caring with clarity is strength. Caring with chaos is self-destruction. You can be present without being paranoid. You can be mindful without being consumed. But to do that, you have to let go of the belief that you're in charge of everything. You're not, and you never were. And that's not weakness, that's alignment. Because the truth is, your worry never protected you. It just distracted you from your own life. And if that life has been slipping by, quietly in the background, maybe it's time to shift. If this feels like something you've been holding in, subscribe and hit the bell. Not for motivation, but for reminders like this. You're allowed to stop performing fear. You're allowed to stop auditioning for safety. You're allowed to just be here. No tension, no future fixing, no invisible war in your mind. Just you, and this moment, unarmed. You were taught that you need a reason to feel calm, that peace is something you earn, after the problems are solved, after the future is certain, after you've proven you deserve it. But that's a lie. Peace isn't a prize. It's a default, buried under years of conditioning. Because underneath all your mental rehearsals, underneath the tension in your chest, the what-ifs and worst-case scenarios, there's nothing wrong. Right now, you're just a person, sitting with a thought. And that thought isn't reality. It's a story. A story you've told yourself so many times that it feels true. But that doesn't make it truth. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." And that's the paradox. The more you try to fight the worry, the more real it becomes. Because you're feeding it. With fear, with focus, with belief. But what happens if you don't fight? What happens if you just let it pass? You'll find something strange. The worry weakens. The narrative fades. The noise dies down. Because thoughts only stay when you argue with them, when you believe them, when you wrap your identity around them. But you're not your thoughts. You're the space they move through. And in that space there's peace. Not because everything is perfect, but because you've stopped demanding it to be. You've stopped bargaining with life. You've stopped trying to control what was never yours. And in doing so, you finally feel what the world promised but never delivered. Relief. So now you get it. The world doesn't reward your worrying. It just keeps feeding it. And the more you give in, the more it takes. It drains your energy, kills your presence, and trades your peace for preparation that never ends. But the truth is, there is no perfect preparation, no certainty, no full control, and chasing it is how you waste your life. You don't need more planning. You don't need more coping strategies. You don't need more motivation. You need honesty. You need to admit, worry has become your identity, and it's not serving you anymore. You need to notice how many of your thoughts are just fear wearing a different mask. How many decisions are built on what if? How many moments you've missed waiting for the next disaster? But there's nothing to wait for, nothing to protect yourself from. This is your life, not the one you're preparing for, not the one that starts after the next crisis. This one, here, now. And if you're tired of losing your days to imaginary disasters, you don't need another tactic. You need to let go. Let go of the version of you that only knows how to live in fear. Let go of the obsession with control. Let go of the idea that suffering is your duty. Because when you do, everything softens, and life, for once, begins to unfold without resistance. Now I'll ask you, what fear are you still holding on to that you've never seen actually happen? Tell me in the comments.